Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Kiran, PETA India's manager for vegan and corporate projects, and joining me today is my colleague and PETA India's vice president of celebrity and public relations, Sachin Bangera, with a very special guest, Jamie Logan, who is visiting us in Mumbai all the way from New York. You might know Jamie from PETA US Just So You Know podcast or her YouTube channel, Jamie's Corner. Welcome to India, Jamie.
Woo! Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to have you here to talk all things vegan.
Yes, we must.
Yeah, so what brings you to India and what are your plans? Do you have any connections in India?
So a few things bring me to India. First and foremost, I've always wanted to come to India since I was a child. And it just so happened that a lot of things ended up lining up this year, from a yoga teacher training to working with you guys at PETA India. And I also have friends and family that I wanted to see out here as well.
And you know, because you do so much of vegan activism, I would want to tell you that actually veganism originated in India. The OG vegans was a Himalayan tribe that used to live in the Himalayan region 5,000 years ago, and they were the first vegans to be documented in the history. Isn't that amazing?
It is amazing. I mean, well, when you look at Hinduism, the respect for nature, the respect for life, seeing a soul in living beings, I mean, it makes sense.
Absolutely, and it's not just Hinduism, even Buddhism, Jainism have reverence for Ahimsa, and the Constitution of India in its Article 51AG states that it's a fundamental duty of every Indian citizen to have compassion for all animals. Ahimsa and veganism is true to India, but talking of veganism, what got you started and how did you got into being a vegan and then being an activist?
It's a great question. I think, like everybody else, I grew up in a pretty meat-heavy household, and I never saw myself becoming an activist, let alone a vegan and somebody that's outspoken about it. I was 13 years old when I first started thinking about the food system, and it wasn't because I went out by myself and wanted to look into it. It was because it was presented right in front of me and I couldn't look away. So my whole life, I think I spent trying to protect myself from suffering and getting closer to it. I would close slaughterhouse footage when I would see it pop up on Facebook. Or I remember one time my dad was boiling lobsters for dinner, and he was throwing live lobsters in a pot of water, and instead of standing there and trying to get him to stop, I walked away. And it was much easier just to leave the house and not think about it. And it wasn't until I was 13 where I was on a highway and a pig livestock truck drove by. My brothers and we were in the car with our grandparents, and my dog was sitting on my lap. And I just remember looking out the window and seeing these little snouts peering through the hole on this big metal livestock truck. And when I looked closer, I saw these individuals inside the truck panting and foaming at the mouth and shaking, and they were covered in dirt and feces, and it was a really, really hot summer day. And I looked at those animals and looked at the one that was in my lap, and suddenly they didn't seem so different. And so I had to start asking myself, why do I eat some animals and love others? That moment, I think, stuck with me forever. I can really see it so clearly in my mind, even to this day. And from that moment on, I stopped eating pigs. And then little by little, I realized, well, cows are no different. Chicken is no different. Fish is absolutely no different. And then I learned about the dairy and egg industries, and January 1st of 2018, I decided to go vegan, and it was just supposed to be a month-long challenge for Veganuary. And in that month, I felt so much better. I was learning about the industries of dairy and eggs and how they too are slaughter industries, and something that I thought once of as a diet and something that was just like, I have to give up all these things, suddenly became a moral and ethical code. And it was just, I didn't want to participate in these systems that hurt animals. And I think the only thing that began to quiet my mind when I would think through these terrible things that were happening to animals was getting into activism and trying to do something about it.
I so relate. In fact, this is what we share in common. Even I went vegan in 2018. So
Really?
yes, Although my moment was a little different. I was a lifelong vegetarian, and I always considered myself an animal lover. I was rescuing animals off the street, helping animals, etc. But I visited my hometown in 2018, and I saw a small animal, and I couldn't really make out whether it was a dog or whether it was some other animal. And when I went close, I saw a really tiny calf. A calf of a size of a dog, that tiny. And I was shocked, and obviously, I mean, it visibly looked sick and dehydrated. So I made some calls, and I mean, it's not an uncommon sight to see stray cows in India. It's pretty common, but I had never seen a calf that small all by himself. And after making some calls, I could finally provide some help. We rescued the calf, and he went to a rescue center, but he didn't make it. He barely survived 2 days, and that was it. And that's when it hit me. Why was that tiny a calf all by himself on a street? Why? And that made me think about what's happening and about my dairy consumption. I went back and I actually looked up PETA India's video, Deadly Dairy. Yeah, so I saw that video, and it was not difficult to make that connect. And I understood that I was just being a hypocrite by consuming dairy and calling myself an animal lover, and that's how that was my moment.
Wow.
What about you?
Since we are sharing our light bulb moments, let me go with mine. So I come from a non-vegetarian family. So I was raised non-vegetarian, but I always felt that I somehow did not like eating animals, and I was always forced to have, while you're growing up.
Me too.
Your family, your parents, they always tell you you'll grow stronger and you need to have your meat, your dairy, glass of milk. And glass of milk is big in India. All kids are forced to have. And I think somehow I resisted that, but I was still consuming milk and milk products, but I was not really a fan of it. I couldn't live without my cheese and butter. And I think it was in 2004. So I had already turned vegetarian in my teenage, and in 2004 I think I came across one of PETA's videos, and about slaughterhouses. And then I, instead of how you said that I just looked away, I chose to look at that video. And I knew I was going to hate myself for seeing that video, but then it made me realize that was my moment, that there's so much happening, and just going vegetarian is not enough. And you have to do everything in your power, in your capacity, to help animals. Even if you're one individual, it's okay. And that's when I towards the end of 2004 is when I went vegan. And then in 2005 I joined PETA. So that was
I always regret, why did not I get to know about this, or that moment, why it had to happen in 2018 and why not in 2008.
Yeah, I think we all go through that moment where we feel I should have done this before.
Yes.
Sooner.
It's my
and
one
I think
regret.
That's also because we feel so much better. After turning vegan, and health wise, I really had a lot of digestive issues, and this was, I know that now because I left dairy. I know now that it was because of dairy, and almost 75% of Indians are lactose intolerant, and yes, and as Sachin said, usually kids do not like milk. We do not. I mean, all kids, they hate milk, but we force them into having a glass of milk with chocolate or with some other sort of syrup. I have no idea why.
We do everything that it takes,
not to like milk after infancy.
Yeah. And in India, it's you don't have calcium and you need to have your glass of milk. So, and kids are really scared. Even when they don't like it, they are you need to have your calcium. And whatever vitamins, minerals, and they just go with it.
Meanwhile, there's so many other sources where we can get calcium, and it just goes to show this deep-rooted social conditioning that we're up against. I don't consider my parents to be bad people.
Yeah.
They're just victims of this narrative that Big Ag has pushed on people.
Yeah.
That, they say you need these products for strong bones. Meanwhile, I think there's a statistic that says that the places that consume the most amount of dairy have the highest rates of osteoporosis, which is
It's
bone
so true,
fractures.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not just osteoporosis, overall, the lifestyle diseases, they talk about calcium and protein, but they forget about cholesterol
Right.
and saturated fat. Why
Right.
do they? Why don't they talk about? So they're working so hard to hide the truth from the public.
Absolutely. We're so lucky nowadays that we have alternatives that can give us that same taste satisfaction, and that we can go out to amazing vendors, and especially here in India, a lot of the food is by default vegan. They just are adding in the ghee, adding in the butter.
Absolutely.
Meanwhile, you can just replace it with the vegan alternative.
So what is your favorite?
My favorite Indian dish so far? So I loved the sampler, the thali, because we got to try the different dals, and I think rice. Was there khichdi?
It was millet.
Millet
khichdi.
So I loved the millet khichdi with the dal, paired with the dal, and then the spinach and tofu, I think.
Yeah.
That was delicious and mixed in, and the pani puri was very exciting. It was delicious. The second pani puri that I had was very spicy though, and when it exploded, I did get a little chili pepper stuck somewhere in there, but it was violent but tasty.
It's funny how we talk about these superfoods, millet, and then there's ragi, and they have become superfoods in India, and they always existed in India. Like, if we go back, people always used to have millet khichdi. Culturally.
Used to have,
and
now
now
India is a very dry and arid country, especially certain parts. They don't receive a lot of rainfall, and these millets, whether it's jawar or ragi, these crops are really good to be grown in arid region.
And what is funny is because the West is taking interest in it. That's how like Indians are like now open to having millet khichdi or millet in their diet, or tofu or ragi, and it's really funny how we get so influenced by what's happening in the West, and we want to just like mimic that.
No, we want to be like you guys. Think about yoga even.
Yes.
Taking yoga from the East, bringing it to the West.
Yes.
I am so inspired by Indian culture, and I'm learning more about it, and Indian food, and it's amazing. Like, when I think of my American background, I'm embarrassed. And I just, it is what it is. I think this concept from what I've been learning about Hinduism of really just respecting life. Yeah. And that to me aligns a lot more with my morals and values.
Yeah, even vegetarianism,
Yes.
India influenced the world. India influenced the West.
Right.
With vegetarianism, as back as 4th century BCE.
Yeah. People are so driven by money, power, success, and it tramples over this idea that we should be respecting others. So especially with yoga and yoga teachings, yoga teaches us to not harm, ahimsa. Yes. It teaches that there's 5 pillars in yoga, the 5 basic principles, which should guide our behavior. So it says we should not harm, ahimsa. We should not lie. We should not be deceptive. And when you look at that in terms of animal rights, the industries are lying to people to make money. The third one, do not sexually assault, brahmacharya, which means that in the industries, what are they doing to the cows? They are assaulting them, violating them, impregnating them, taking their babies. Asteya, do not steal. So we're stealing everything from them. Their milk, their eggs, their lives, their flesh, their skins. And aparigraha, which is do not be greedy. And that is what we are facing. It's this greed of I want more, I want more, I want more. When we should be asking ourselves, how can we give back to the earth? How can we uplift the lives of others? Because yoga teaches us that the happiest people are the ones who uplift the lives of others.
Absolutely. And I think people are also not very aware, and of course this is all because of the meat and dairy industry trying so hard to hide the truth from public. It was only after PETA India's investigations that we could make people see the connection between the dairy and beef.
Right.
Because it's the dairy industry that supplies cattle for the beef industry for India to be the fourth largest exporter of beef in the world. And people did not just know that, people did not know that male calves are just sent for slaughter because of their no use to the dairy industry, because they cannot produce milk, and chicks, like, they are macerated by drowning them or burning them alive, all of this on the first day of their lives, just because these male chicks cannot produce egg, and they are waste to the egg industry. And people usually in India do not know this. And of course that's where activism kicks in, and that's where social media activism comes in. So how do you think social media is influencing and is helping spread the message of compassion?
Absolutely, that's a great question. So I think when it comes to videotaping the things that are happening to these animals, and you're describing these horrific violent acts, it is hard for humans to see that, because we want to protect ourselves and maintain this level of cognitive dissonance to stay comfortable in our actions. And I think my biggest fear before I went vegan and became an activist was not so much that that I was the reason why, but that I wouldn't be able to change it from happening, and I wouldn't be able to stop it. And so you get into this mindset of like, well, if I can't do anything about it, why am I going to change? So what I realized is that's so far from the truth, and that I can do something about it, and it's a ripple effect where our voices are so powerful, and that if we can speak to one person and get them to wake up to these truths and change, that one person is going to reach their circle of people, and their circle of people is going to reach even more people. And there is social change theories that say if we can just reach, I think, around 12.5% of the population with this message, then from there it spreads even faster. And so the role of social media is, I believe, something that can help accelerate this process. Because not only am I just now reaching the one person that I'm speaking to on the street, or maybe a classroom of children that I'm speaking to in a high school, but now I can take those video clips, post it online. Next thing you know, I'm reaching millions of people with that message.
Yeah.
It's tricky because on the other end with social media is you have the meat industry now that's paying influencers to put out misinformation. And so just the other day when I was speaking to children in a school, this one girl raised her hand and she said, "Jamie, this is very interesting. Thank you for being here and sharing this, but I don't know what to believe." And she said, "I am seeing so much misinformation when it comes to things on social media where it's talking about health, and you see people posting about the carnivore diet, and you hear those people talking about that, and then she's like, now I hear this side of things where a plant-based diet is reversing diseases and chronic illnesses," and she's like, I'm just all mixed up. And so the way I responded to her is, well, first and foremost, I think we should be looking at peer-reviewed studies ourselves, and also always asking, who is funding the studies that we're reading?
Right.
Because the majority of the time, the meat, dairy, and egg industries will fund a study and put that out to then confuse the public. When you look at the actual data and statistics, we are seeing something like the China study, which looks at a society over a 20-year span and finds that the people that are consuming the most amount of animal products have the highest rates of heart disease, cancer, and diabetes. You also see high rates of osteoporosis. And then they find that the people who are consuming no animal products or very little animal products have the least amount of these chronic illnesses and diseases. That all being said, you cannot argue the ethics of veganism. Taking the life of someone who does not want to die is never humane, it's never ethical, and we should avoid doing that at all costs.
Absolutely, and even for the people who really do care about their own health, the best way to do it is try out the vegan diet for 21 days.
Absolutely.
As,
Right.
Yeah.
And the health is one benefit of it. The environment and being more sustainable on a plant-based diet is a benefit of it, but that's not what keeps me vegan to this day. What keeps me vegan is thinking about the billions, trillions of individuals who are suffering and having their lives taken from them for a meal that doesn't even last more than a few minutes, their entire existence. So when it comes to social media, and I think with activism in general, I had to ask myself, how can I be the most effective and how can I relay these truths and this message in a way that will not make people become super defensive. And so it's been a journey where I think when I first went vegan and I started going to slaughterhouse vigils, and I was so angry. And it's like, how can you not be? You see these innocent victims going inside these horrible places, having their throats slit. And I mean, it makes me angry. I feel like I'm standing up to a bully. But by me going and yelling at everybody in my family, I started noticing that I was ostracizing myself. Nobody wanted to be around me. Nobody was listening. And suddenly I was that crazy vegan and everybody was shooting the messenger as opposed to accepting the message. Yeah. And so I began shifting my approach in a way where we have the facts and the science on our side. We have the data and we are logical. Why do I need to get flustered? And I could just simply have a debate or a conversation and crush it every time. And so I was going to these AV cubes, and I was also working for a film company. I think film is very important in getting this message across, because ultimately that's what change does. Yeah, so I was working on animal rights documentaries and got millions, 75 plus million views on those projects. Wow. And so that's how I got into editing and filming and whatnot. And the director of the company said to me, what are you doing later? Let's go and shoot some content. And he filmed one of the AV cubes where I was just having conversations with people. And there was something so awkward and funny about the conversations that I was having. And it was different from the approach of Earthling Ed, who's very smart and has his act together, versus me, who I can't even control my facial expressions, and I'm looking at the camera like, this idiot over here, And so it was different, and I think that with activism, we have to be ourselves to make it sustainable in the long run. And so that's how Jamie's Corner was founded and how that started. And I will say, I really do love talking with people. I do have a good time. And we need to see non-vegans as allies, not as our enemies, because they feel that. And when they can feel that you are rooting for them, and when you are looking at them with love, as we should be, we're trying to spread love and compassion for all living beings. When we can do that, it disarms them, and that actually allows us to see them as capable of going vegan. If I just look at them as an enemy and a violent, mean person, how can I expect them to be a vegan?
Correct, yeah.
But being honest, I love your quirky way of activism. I do. And to me, what's striking is, how do people not get it? We are just 8 billion people killing over 92 billion land animals every year, and trillions of fishes.
Right.
I mean, even here in India, which is still considered the most vegetarian country, or the country with most number of vegetarians, we are killing 1 million chickens every 4 hours just in India, which is so striking. And it's as you said, it's difficult to argue the ethics of veganism. People need to understand that these animals are individuals. And for chickens, for example, they have such beautiful personalities. For someone who has never met a chicken, may not know, but they're such dedicated mothers. They have beautiful personalities. Even scientists now agree that chickens have intellect of equal to dogs and cats that we consider friends. And that's why I don't understand, how do we differentiate, and how have we created these arbitrary, differences in our heads?
Since we are talking about eating vegan, what's the funniest excuse you've heard from someone about the idea of going vegan?
I'm sure there must be many.
It's the same 5 excuses. It shows the deep brainwashing, because I literally know what these people are going to say a minute before they say it. It's the plants have feelings. And first of all, I always tell people, please don't act like you care about the plants. You're eating animals. You don't care about the plants. And I do agree, plants are living. I don't want to cause destruction, and I want to minimize that to as far as possible. But what they're not understanding is, I always ask people, I'm like, so you're an animal, humans are animals, plants are plants. Do you not see the difference between you and a carrot? Like if I were to chop a carrot or chop you in half, would you not care? You wouldn't see a difference? And the plant, the carrot, they don't have a central nervous system or a brain or a spinal cord. They don't have pain receptors. So that's, you know, how I usually answer those things. And even if they did, you can reduce the amount of plants that you are harming or causing casualties to by going vegan, because the animals are eating a significant amount of plants. More than, I think, 70% of the plants grown are fed to the farmed animals.
Absolutely.
There's 90 billion mouths you have to feed, and there's only 8 billion humans. Do the math.
Yeah.
So that's number one. Number two, I always hear the crop death argument, that by farming plants that you are killing mice or insects, and there's a few ways that I respond to that. And the first way is, well, you can argue, I guess, that vegans are against killing and intentionally killing versus unintentionally. Like, you're gonna live and exist, and unfortunately humans cause harm just by living and existing, but I can minimize that suffering and harm. And the idea with veganism is we are against animal exploitation as a whole. And so by bringing up and deflecting to unintentionally, maybe there's a few crop deaths, to then justify you participating in a system that kills over 90 billion animals just doesn't make any sense. It's not logical. So I think that farming practices can absolutely be better. There's vertical farming practices. You could try growing your own food. And so when it comes to that as well, you can reduce the amount of casualties by going vegan. Another argument that I hear constantly are lions and tigers. And I think that that's such a ridiculous comment, that lions and tigers eat meat, so should we. I'm like, what else do you do that lions and tigers do? Like, are you sniffing each other, your butts? Like, that's what lions and tigers do. Are you eating your babies? Are you hurting each other? Are you walking around naked? I mean, maybe you are, but most of the actions that we do are nothing like lions and tigers. So don't use the one thing that they do to try and justify your behavior.
I think most of the times it is the guilt that they have.
Yeah.
That's why they use, you know, these different forms of excuses to like make you feel guilty about your kind choices.
It's just exhausting.
Yeah.
I'm like, come up with something original. Give me something to work with. And they do this to deflect from their own actions, like what you're saying. Because they'll constantly bring up, well, you have an iPhone, and your iPhone used human slave labor, maybe, or clothing, that you're fast fashion. And the truth is, when you go vegan, you become more mindful. And so I don't buy new clothes. I actually thrift everything that I own, because we're trying to do better. I think once you know better, you do better, right? But how does that, by having an iPhone, have anything to do with buying meat 3 times a day? You know, if somebody said to me, here, Jamie, here's an alternative option that doesn't hurt people or animals or the planet versus the same old one that does, I would obviously choose the option that doesn't cause the harm. You know?
It's a no-brainer.
So you come up across these excuses all the time.
Yeah, and of course the protein excuse.
The
Where do you
protein-
get your protein from?
Over and over and over again.
Yeah.
I'm
That's
like,
the most commonly used.
Yeah, and people need protein. People don't need meat. But meat industry has, of course, spent billions of dollars to make meat synonymous with protein, which it is not. I mean, people can get protein from so many varied sources. And you had that thali. I mean, it had millets and it had vegetables and chapati, and it was a plate full of protein.
Full of protein. I mean, the strongest animals in the world, like elephants and gorillas, they're vegan. They're plant-based. I mean, it just goes to show how little people actually know what protein even is. It's building blocks of amino acids, which you can get from plants. All of the animals that we eat got their protein from plants. So why not just go directly to the source? And you will hear sometimes B12 and iron as well. And the truth of the matter is the animals are supplemented with a lot of nutrients. Like the B12 comes from a bacteria in the ground, and so throughout farming practices, when you wash the vegetables, you're not getting that B12. So everybody should be supplementing with that.
Yeah,
it's like
even meat eaters. I mean, it's because B12 has also got a lot to do with how your intestines are able to absorb the vitamin. And a lot of non-vegetarians are also deficient on vitamin B12, and it has got nothing to do with whether someone is on a vegetarian diet or a vegan diet, and everyone should be taking B12 supplements irrespective.
Totally.
So I think it's just, picking up on those few vitamins or talking about protein or talking about amino acids. People are deflecting from the actions of deliberately harming animals when they can get all their nutrition from sustainable and ethical vegan diets.
From the doctor herself. And I think just adding on to that, it's amazing to me how people will say, I would rather condemn an animal to be mutilated, confined, tortured, and killed than take a freaking supplement.
Absolutely. And it's not just me who's saying it. I mean, American Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, which is the largest academy of nutrition and food professionals in the world, says that vegans are at reduced risk of ischemic heart disease, diabetes, blood pressure, obesity, certain type of cancer. What else do you want? It's not just that you are getting all the nutrients from a vegan diet, you are also protecting your health from not getting into those lifestyle diseases.
Cool. Yeah. Let's talk about activism. So we've watched your videos, and one of your videos actually went viral over here in India. The
I think
one,
everywhere.
Which one?
The one about Coach, the
You
runway
disrupted
show
the
that you
Coach
crashed.
fashion show.
So could you share about why you did that and why that style of activism is important?
Definitely, I would love to. So the Coach fashion show was a little over a year ago, and I crashed the New York Fashion Week to raise awareness about how cows are killed for leather. PETA in the US, they had asked me if I would be interested in doing this, and for me, it's like whatever it takes. If it's gonna get the message out there for the animals, absolutely. So we ended up meeting that afternoon, and we got ready, threw on a little outfit. I think the hardest part was just getting in. That was what we were most nervous about. And as an activist, I think we just have to put our own discomfort aside for the animals and just do whatever it takes. Speak up even when your voice shakes. So I'm no different than anybody else. Like, I get scared doing these things. I'm expecting to spend the night in jail too. And not to mention, I had 102 fever. I was not feeling well, but I'm like, we are gonna do this and get it done. These are last resort kind of actions. These companies, like Coach, are presented with undercover investigation footage, with facts about how it's terrible for the environment and alternatives that they could switch over to. And when they don't answer and when they don't change, that is when they are met with disruptions. And that's when we have to take things to the next level. But what was really cool about that action was we had Vogue Business talking about the leather industry and how unsustainable it is. And they mentioned the cruelty. And we had articles written about alternatives to leather. And as you said, it went viral in many other countries. And so I think that we need to do more of these kind of actions, because unfortunately the only way to get media sometimes is when you do things that are at that level of risky. And unfortunately, just speaking about these things and trying to show people the undercover investigation footage isn't always enough. So that was wild,
That was wild. Thankfully, here in India, I think over 12 major designers have pledged to go leather free. Of course, after efforts from PETA India and Lakme Fashion Week, over 12 major designers
33 designers in India, like the major ones, top designers, they have pledged to go leather free.
So great.
Yeah, and it is so important when someone of their stature, makes this kind of a statement, people listen. It's not because like someone like me standing outside and just leafleting, maybe like a couple of people will come and take a leaflet and just walk away. But it makes so much impact when someone of that stature speaks up. And that's why we work a lot with celebrity supporters. Like PETA in the US, PETA in India, and everywhere, all the PETA entities. And oftentimes we get asked about why do you have to get celebrities? Like, if you are a non-profit organization, you're working for animals, why do you have to involve celebrities? And
so important.
Yeah, it is so important, right? Like, maybe because of that you got to know about PETA, you've got to know about what animals go through, the suffering.
Yeah.
And that is what is important, apart from, of course, activism is, and we love your style of activism,
Thank you.
Jamie, and and we've been, in fact, I have once crashed KFC's store launch in Bombay, and
I love it. That is so
I
awesome.
was like, I had just joined PETA, and I was like barely 19, and I was like a college kid, and I wanted to do everything, but at the same time you're scared, like you're nervous, you don't know how to go about it, and there's this KFC store, and Indian cricket team and I think New Zealand cricket team, they were supposed to come for the launch, for the opening, and we were right opposite KFC, sitting at a restaurant and making the plan as to like who will go first, and there were like 4-5 of us, and there's like media that is inside the KFC store, they are attending the press conference, and then we are here making plans how to just go inside, and there were like these two volunteers, girls who went in with like a placard inside their outfit, and we were like waiting outside for the queue, and the moment the press came outside, we went running. So they were escorted, like they went there, but they were just pulled by the security, and there we were like 5 of us, four of us standing outside with the placards, and we got like cheers from the cricket team, like like a couple of them said, you guys are doing good work.
Amazing.
So that gives you that kind of like motivation to do more. Like when you have like 10 people shooing you, and then you have just one person who's cheering you, it makes so much better.
Totally. And I love that you said like you found the perfect time. This is the opening of the store, and I think with activism, if somebody wants to get involved, I think it's important to get a solid team together that is going to follow directions and instructions, and it always helps to have somebody that's in charge that can kind of give commands or give instruction on like when to wait outside, when to go in, and the main thing always is to make sure you're cheating out to the camera with whatever message or sign that you have, so that when the media picks up on it, that's when it sort of spreads. And the power of hitting companies like KFC or Coach, companies like Starbucks, where we got them to drop the plant-based surcharge. We do these things because that sends a message and a signal to the rest of the industries.
And especially with such companies, high-end companies who have like really high budgets, they can just like buy media, and then they can just change the story, the narrative of what happened. And it is so important to resort like to things like that, these forms of activism where you just go and shock people. Like when people ask me like why does PETA do this, like why do you all resort to like these kind of activism where you're shocking people or you're doing things like that, and that is what it takes, like that is how you take interest in what we have to say, as compared to like whatever the brands are doing, they're paying in their marketing, and they have like such huge budgets. But we as a non-profit organization, we have to do such things to get your attention.
Yeah, PETA's brilliant at that. I mean, there's so many campaigns come to mind, from the lettuce ladies, where you have like these beautiful women that are dressed up and they're holding a sign and talk, and that engages people. Or I love some of the stuff PETA's done with aliens, where PETA has the aliens coming down to Earth and farming humans and doing what we do to animals, but the aliens are doing it to us. And these things, it gets people thinking, and it's creative, and also it's peaceful. Let's be real, nothing we're doing is causing more violence or suffering. It's peaceful, and as much as the meat eaters will like to act like they are the victims, the real victims are the animals.
They are. I think a lot of people also argue that with so many other social justice issues that are plaguing humanity, why care about animals? But I think it's all related. Because one, of course, the environment. India is the 7th most climate vulnerable country in the world, and even there, the marginalized are disproportionately affected by the climate change compared to those who, are wealthy enough, and it's generally these corporations that are causing the most harm. They are protected from the worst effects of climate change. India alone, last year has seen wildfires, flash floods, severe droughts, and in fact 2023 there was a flash flood in the Himalayan regions, and that one flash flood caused over 1,000 crore of infrastructure loss. So that's the financial loss. And of course, we lost so many lives there. So it is all related.
Yeah.
So killing animals for meat, egg and dairy is responsible for, I think, up to 14 to 18% of the human-induced greenhouse gases. And that greenhouse gas being methane, which is 28 times more potent than carbon. People don't understand, that it's not just driving an electric car that is going to help the environment. It's also not consuming meat, egg and dairy, and it's difficult for people to make that connect, especially so because making that connect will cause them inconvenience because they'll have to make those changes in their lifestyle. And it's very unfair for a certain number of people to live a comfortable life while there are so many others that are affected because of the climate crisis, which is created because of the egg industry and dairy industry and meat industry.
Well, it's not the human or the animal. You don't have to pick and choose. You can fight for both issues. How about let's just not eat animals and their secretions 3 times a day and fight for whatever human rights issue you want to fight for. There's very little people speaking up for animals, dogs and cats in general, and then you add farmed animals and then nobody's really speaking up for them. There's less than 2% of the world are vegans. So that's why I feel that it's necessary that I really go hard and speak up on that. But when we talk about human related issues, why don't we talk about all the people working in tanneries that are dying under 50 years old because they're infected with toxic chemicals that lead to cancers? I mean, and that's here in India, a lot of it. And not only that, but you have people working in slaughterhouses, and slaughterhouse workers are known to have some of the highest rates of PTSD, suicides, substance abuse issues. There's child labor as well in these industries. So if people care about human rights, they would be vegan.
And it is also plaguing our society because now studies show that people who abuse animals are 3 times more likely to commit all other types of crimes, including rape, murder, harassment, drug abuse, all sorts of crimes. So it's not just about humans versus animals. It's we are all in this together. Everything that affects animals also does affect us as a society. What do you think?
Yeah, and there's one more thing that I find funny is about people who care about the environment. Like you'll have people who come to you and they'll be like, don't use straw. It's affecting the marine life.
The fish.
And fish. And then you see them eating fish. I feel like, okay, the best way to help marine life is by not eating them. Like, how can you not get that? And, so they have their own theories, and like Dr. Kiran said that everything is so much interlinked. Like you can't be just speaking up about rights for one species and not talk about others. Everything is interlinked. Like when you talk about human rights, so does child rights, women rights, everything. You have to stand up for everything, and so do you have to stand up for animal rights. You can't just leave one out of it. Everything is so interconnected.
Yeah, but everybody wants to just talk the talk and say, well, I support this human rights issue. I'm really for women's rights. But that doesn't require them most of the time to have to do anything. Whereas veganism, when you go vegan or go plant-based, you are not eating animals 3 times a day. Like you actually have to walk the walk. And so everybody wants to change the world, but they can't change what they eat for breakfast. And so I think that's where you'd run into these issues with these climate people that are like, they just want to blame the government and blame authority and say they need to stop using so many fossil fuels, they need to help reduce carbon emissions. And while I think that is one part of it, they're not going to have any incentive to change if the people don't give them the demand to change. Like if we stopped demanding animal products at the rates that we're demanding it, why would the industries have the incentive to produce so much of it? It goes hand in hand.
It's so simple. And I think even with women, we so like the idea of consent, and we unequivocally reject anything that happens to a human without their informed and voluntary consent. But there were times in the history when prisoners, mentally ill,
Yeah.
poor, physically disabled, was considered fair game for experiments by the experimentators. In fact, I remember a study called Tuskegee syphilis study, where African American men, all with syphilis, were denied care in a misleading experiment by the experimentators because they wanted to study the effects of the last stage of the disease. So while we talk about consent, how are we not understanding that the animals that we are killing, enslaving, torturing for egg, meat and dairy are not consenting to this torture?
No, they can't. They can't consent, and
And that's what makes them the easy target, like they
Right.
can't speak for themselves, and you don't want others to speak for them. So
right.
why not just use them without their consent?
Well, we're programmed to
Yeah.
ignore their suffering. So when they're crying and when they are trying to advocate for themselves, when they're escaping slaughterhouses and jumping off of these massive livestock trucks to try to save themselves, our society somehow is just programmed
Yeah.
to try and
Yeah.
ignore it.
And we call them voiceless. They're not voiceless. It's just that we ignore to choose.
Exactly.
We choose to ignore their voices. I mean, they scream. You pass through, I'm sure you must have witnessed the roadside slaughterhouses in India. And if you cross through any, you can hear the hens screeching for their lives.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult.
When you go vegan, you just start seeing the world in such a different way. Like when you walk down those supermarket aisles and you see the meat, it becomes so clear as to where that came from and what it is. Like I see meat on the in restaurants and people eating them, and I'm like, I just see the individual behind it. And
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to see beauty in this world where you see so much suffering around. So, yeah, that's where I think,
Do you remember the climate change march that we went to?
yes.
Where
I
we
do.
were asked not to carry any messages about not eating animals. They were like, you can carry
Imagine
whatever
that.
you want to.
But
They-
not asking people not to go vegan, because
Go vegan or go vegetarian.
because one
So-
cannot be a meat eating environmentalist, and that's
fact.
So they just, said that you can carry whatever messages you want to, like, placards you want to, except for like asking people to go vegan or go vegetarian. And this was from the climate change committee. We're like, how does this work?
Right. It's the
But-
single biggest thing that you can do at an
Yeah.
individual level
But
is to go vegan.
And us being us, we took some, we just hit the placards, and the moment they were not there, we just like,
that's good.
And they came, like, they
That's
came
good.
to us and they were like, no, you can't do this, you can't do this. And we just kept doing that. And we just finished the entire march.
I love it.
Yeah. And I think that picture got carried in
the
it was like
major
one of the
media.
major outlets in India. Like it was the front page, like us holding that you can't be a meat eating environmentalist.
That is so awesome that you got that. And that's what it takes. I think you can't influence the world trying to be like it.
Yeah.
And so we do have to take things up a notch and go into places where we're not welcome and where it's uncomfortable to start those conversations and to create that shift. Because I do try to believe that, okay, if people are at a climate march, somewhere deep down they care.
Yeah.
So if we can just figure out what that is, we should try. And when it comes to activism in general, we got to change our approaches based on who we're talking to. I don't believe one size fits all.
Yeah.
And so
Absolutely.
sometimes a more aggressive approach and maybe kind of angry might work to wake somebody up.
So,
Whereas for another person, being a little bit softer and just encouraging them and saying, you got this, you can do it, I believe in you, you know?
So who's been your role model?
There's so many people that have influenced my activism, and I try to pick and choose different things that people are doing, different tactics, and use it for my own activism. So I'll just, to name a few, because there's so many. I really love Earthling Ed's style of activism because he maintains this calm demeanor while just destroying everybody he comes across with his arguments. So that's for one. I really love Dr. Faraz Harsini because he is so abolitionist in his stance and his approach, and he inspires other people to get active. Rob Banks, who's a close friend of mine, has been a huge role model to me because he is somebody that really tackles celebrities and calls them out, especially for wearing fur. And so he was actually one of the first people that I started doing disruptive activism with. And then somebody who, in I guess my recent year of somebody who's inspired me recently is Sharon Gannon, who founded Jivamukti Yoga. And I'm so inspired by her because she really lives and breathes the vegan message, and she uses kindness and compassion to get the message across for the animals. And I love her approach because she is able to not only reach just the few people she's speaking to, but her impact has lasted for decades. And her style of activism is sustainable, and Jivamukti Yoga, it seeks enlightenment through compassion for all living beings. And so I've just been very inspired by her and learning from her in the past year. And part of the reason I'm in India is for the Jivamukti Yoga teacher training. And so she is very inspiring to many people, and so I hope to have half as much impact as that woman. Just to name a few people that have been inspiring to me, and you guys inspire me. I mean, 20 years at PETA is amazing.
It's been like forever. But yeah, you don't realize when you love doing, you do what you love. When it's about like you have that passion that drives you, I think it just takes the timing part away from it and you're just happy. So when I joined, and 20 years ago when like I started talking about going vegan, and it was not like a known concept in India, and people thought, oh, this is like a Western concept that they're trying to force upon us. And look where we are now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And even now, like I think there is a little this thing about vegan being expensive, like being very elitist.
I can just tell people that in ration shops where the below poverty line people who are impoverished go to get subsidized ration. So there are these specified shops in India, and they give out lentils, pulses, rice, wheat in ration, which means that these are the cheapest source of nutrition. They do not give out meat, egg or dairy.
I've never heard of a potato breaking the bank. I mean,
exactly.
It's absurd. Yeah, I think that these are just, again, common excuses that people who haven't even tried going vegan will just think of and use to justify their addictions.
Yeah.
But being that we need to speak up more every second of the day, I'm just so curious how over 20 years you've avoided burnout. How do you stay that committed?
I think because every day you see so much happening, and you want to be that catalyst. I think that is the driving point, like where you want to like be at it, like keep going. And there comes a time when, there are times when I feel like, like I've been doing so much, but then at the same time you look at the good things that are happening. Like now all the restaurants have like a vegan menu, and then there's like vegan cafes, and these weren't there like 20 years ago.
Right.
And that makes you feel good.
Yes.
Like
I will say that I would like to see places in India being better about labeling non-dairy.
Yeah.
Sometimes from the places that I've just been to, the couple days I've been here, I noticed that they'll label veg and non-veg, but the dairy, they're not labeling.
Yeah, I think
most of the foods are very vegan friendly or default vegan in India, but they're not labeled such, and therefore, I mean, it's easy for us to identify, but
I think they have proposed something, right? Like government level where
for something like idli vada, it's vegan, but people, someone might not know whether it is or it isn't, or if there were any dairy products.
Or they sneak in the ghee.
Especially tourists, they might not know. So, but to be honest, India, I think we are very lucky to be in India.
Yes.
Because it's the most easy thing to do, being an Indian, to follow a vegan diet. And we have so many, people now to inspire us, including so many spiritual gurus. So I think that's how I keep going, because even I feel the burnout with the kind of excuses that you get from people, and when you see your closed ones continuing to consume the products of exploitation. And it's difficult to sometimes get through it, and that's why I know that there are so many spiritual gurus, Acharya Prashantji, Mohanji, Dada JP Vaswani, and so many others who have been following vegan diet and have been recommending, and I hear to listen to them, and they make it really easy. And I think for people who are otherwise spiritual, to get the message across to them, it also helps to recommend them to listen to these spiritual gurus.
Oh, for sure. I heard that the best ways to convince an Indian audience is, number one, to have a spiritual
Yes,
leader.
We are big on spirituality.
Yes.
So yes.
Have a spiritual leader talk about these things. Have a cricket player talk about these things.
Cricket, Bollywood, and spiritual gurus.
Bollywood.
There are only 3 religions that we follow, to be honest. Yeah.
Well, look, I think it's brilliant. You take those things, have them speak about it, and okay, well, whatever it takes, right? And speaking of spiritual leaders, I'm going to an ashram outside of Maharashtra with Radhanath Swami, and he is vegan and has been for many years. And Sharon Gannon played a big influence on him in getting him to stop using dairy in his rituals, and he actually has a program where he gives out 1 million meals a day, and they're vegan. And it's so cool, and he feeds people, and he, I think has to walk this line of, he can't say so many things about the dairy industry because his followers get angry, but he definitely walks the walk, and it's really cool to see somebody that's very well respected in the ISKCON community not using any dairy, ghee, butter.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people also do get confused between dietary vegans and ethical vegans.
Yes.
So ethical vegans, of course, are the ones who do not indulge in any kind of activity or consumption that harms animals, including the cosmetics or the products that we use, what we wear, and the forms of entertainment that we choose. So do you have anything to add there? Especially about how things are there in the US in terms of cosmetics, because here in India, thanks to the efforts from PETA India, it's now illegal to test cosmetics and their ingredients on animals.
Wow.
Yeah, and
that's
I
a
know
huge
that's not
victory.
the case
everywhere.
So
No, we have a ways to go, and unfortunately, it's a big problem, cosmetic testing, and also the entertainment where people are going to aquariums and zoos and rodeos. And I think when people ask me, how do you go vegan or how do you stay vegan, you have to be solid in your why. When you figure out why you are vegan, and when you have this vegan mindset and philosophy of ending animal exploitation, then the how becomes easy. You realize that through your everyday actions, you start to ask yourself, am I gonna go to this rodeo? And when you have that vegan philosophy, you would say no, because animals are being exploited and harmed in that. So when it comes to cosmetics, you might have to just do a little bit of research, and you might have to just look up a product beforehand, or if you go to the drugstore, just know what shampoo you wanna get. It's like that little bit of extra effort, for me, I would rather do that than have an animal suffer.
Yeah.
And there's so many products.
And now it's become easy because PETA US has a program called Beauty Without Bunnies. So you can just go online, you just put the name of the brand, and you get information about them, like whether they test or they do not test on animals. And it's become so easy.
Products, cosmetics and household products that are there on that list.
Internet has made it easy.
And you're not compromising the quality either. I wear only vegan makeup and use vegan products, and I think that they're way better. Imagine having to test something on an animal, like what it might do to their skin. Why would you want to put that on your face? First of all. So it's we've gotten to a point where also I think a lot of these companies are using the word vegan and plant-based as a selling point.
There's this new fad where companies want to start labeling their products vegan and cruelty free. Some of them are like, they're not vegan or they're not cruelty free either. But because people are becoming so much aware and they are choosing only vegan or cruelty free, that's why companies feel that, it is the best selling USP for them, like if they just label vegan. But it is so important for people to just go, like read the ingredients and go to PETA US's website, just put your product name, company name, and just see whether they test or don't test on animals. It's become that easy. So yeah, and like thankfully India now has so many companies, like Indian companies, that have come up with such amazing vegan products, you know.
Right.
Like even vegan leather, like suddenly it's become the talk of the town, where like
India
companies
is an agrarian country, and we have made vegan leather from almost everything. Be it
yeah.
mango, pineapple peels, banana peels, apples, coconut. So there is this such a
In
wide
fact, I'm
range
wearing
now.
a vegan leather shoe from this amazing company called
And so
Luso
am I.
Lifestyle. Yeah. So, you know, and like whenever I wear these and I go out, people are like, oh, you're vegan. Why are you wearing leather then? So
They think that's a gotcha moment, right?
yeah.
I'll go to, actually.
Then I get to share everything with them. I was like,
when I was doing the Coach fashion show where I had a sign that said Coach Leather Kills, people in the comment section were asking if I was wearing leather shoes. And I'm like, do you really think I went to like an anti-leather protest or disruption in leather shoes?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me right now? So it kind of goes to show like they don't know that there's alternatives that are that good.
I love when that happens, you know, when you have like people who are genuinely not aware, and then there are like trolls who come. Like once some guy commented on one of my posts saying that, oh, this dude is vegan and he works for PETA and for animals, and look at him, he's wearing leather shoes and all of that, and like he's like abusing me left, right and center. I was like, oh great, like I'm glad that you like my shoes. Here's the link. There's the sale going on. And then he just took the, you know, he went he replied to that statement and he said, I'm really sorry.
Oh.
You know, like, I'm really sorry. So it's not like people are just so cruel. It's just that sometimes they are not aware and they just want to be like every other person. Just go comment and like, you know, make others' life hell.
Yeah, but then how do you respond to people who say that, oh, I cannot eat meat? I mean, I understand that it's cruel. And
I would say you can. You just choose not to.
Yeah.
And I tell people this when I'm speaking to them on the street that, listen, you are going to go about your day and you are going to make choices. I can't force a veggie burger down your throat. I can't force you to get the vegan alternative. However, you should be asking yourself, do you want to be part of the system that is hurting the environment, being violent towards animals, destroying your own health, or do you want to be a part of the solution?
Yeah.
Do you want to be part of the change? Which side of history do you want to be on? And when you look back decades ago with the women's rights movement, when you look at civil rights, when you look at the LGBTQ rights issues and movements, what would you have been doing in those days? Would you have been just going along with what everybody else is doing? Or would you have been standing against the crowd, even if it meant you were standing alone? And the answer is usually what you're doing today.
This has been such an inspiring conversation, Jamie. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, your passion and journey with us. To our viewers, I just hope this dialogue inspires everyone to critically think about the everyday choices that we make to save animals' lives.
And I truly hope that this conversation inspires vegans to get active and to speak up and to put aside their own discomfort to help the animals and to fight against these industries, because we need all hands on deck. The animals are losing their lives every second of every day, and we are gonna change that. I'm very confident of it. I'm very optimistic and so grateful to be here and to know people like you and to have the movement bring us together. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Jamie.